Hey, what is up guys? I'm Exteria, and these are the comps I played up to Masters. Note that this isn't a perfect video for meta, this is just things that I've played to get to this point. The main strat that I go for is what items am I going to build to correlate to what comp I want to play, and I would say the best items you can build currently would be like Kraken for any of these AD comps, or Gwynsu's Rageblade for any of these AP comps besides Tryndamere, since he's an 80 unit. Basically, the idea is if I want to build Kraken, then I look for playing either some sort of Yunara carry, Kindred carry, or into Vayne carry if I get her on drop. Or same thing with Draven. If I get him on drop, then try to build Kraken on him. So you can tempo up to level either 9, or you can play reroll at level 7. Either one's fine. And for the Gwynsu's Rageblade reasoning, if I slam it right away, say for example I play Yordles, I could play up to Diana, which would be fine. Or if I'm strong enough, maybe I'll play into Annie, since Gwynsu's Rageblade on Annie is actually pretty decent, since the more times she'll hit, the more times she's able to cast. And for Kai'Sa's reasoning, I think we all know that Gwynsu's Rageblade is her best item, so there's not really much to say about that. And same thing with Tryndamere, it's one of his best items as well, so that's an option. But unlike Diana and Annie, most of the time you want to play Kai'Sa and Tryndamere from an opener where you're able to force it pretty hard and you play into them later. And the reason why I put Bramble as one of the best items you could build, especially for tanks, is because most boards people build is basically AD, so therefore having Bramble kind of negates that. And speaking of which, Skarner also negates 80 units as well, because he gives 10 more armor to your whole board, potentially up to 30 if you 2-star him. In order to get Skarner, you need to build Gargoyle Stoneplate and throw it on a non-tank unit at level 7, then you're able to unlock Skarner, and you have Skarner with a pretty decent item. So if you can fit Skarner in on your board, try to at least build a Gargoyle Stoneplate. Another way that I force comps is the Augment Unsealed from Steel, because you're able to choose 1 out of 4 Darkened weapons, and it's basically artifacts that are actually really strong. Like for example, the Darkened Scythe is very powerful on Yasuo, so you can just play Yasuo reroll with it and probably win out. On the other hand, it's also really good on Tryndamere. So basically this item forces you to play some sort of reroll comp, and if you get Darkened Bow, you can play up to Yunara or Kindred carry. I saw in the stats that like Belviv of Darkened Bow is actually not good anymore, since the stats is a lot weaker on her now, since they nerfed this item. But Darkened Bow is actually really strong in the early game. Sometimes I put it on Draven, just so we can tempo up to Kindred. Onto like a mini tier list, so you guys can have a visual idea of how I see comps. Basically for the OP tier, meaning if you play this comp properly, it's basically a top 2. A tier is more like it's somewhat conditional, or the strength of the board is a bit too weak. And B tier is more like I pivot into these comps if I have to, and the strengths of the boards are okay. And then for the X, it's basically situational on how you want to play them. So getting into our first comp, which is Kindred Flex. And the style I like to play most of the time is the Noxx Flex into Kindred. The main reason why is because you can play Draven tempo up to Kindred. If you have a Draven on drop, or if you get a Draven later on, then you're able to play this board very easily. The one thing I should mention is you should always get a Gargoyle Stoneplate to get Skarner, because Skarner will probably be your best tank for this board. And for Kindred items, you should always build at least Kraken with the Gwynsu's if you can. It's fine if you don't get it, but I prefer it to have on Kindred so you can power up your Kraken even faster. And the third item, it could be whatever. It could be like a Giant Slayer, or it could be like another Kraken. It doesn't really matter. It's just, as long as you have Kraken, place whatever, she's basically gonna win out. For the budget version of that comp, what I play most of the time is I rolled this at level 7. I try to get at least one tank level 2 like Nautilus or lowers, and try to at least get Draven too, so that you can tempo up to level 9 pretty easily. This board is actually very strong. You just throw in whatever you can when you hit level 8. Like for example, you can throw in like a Leona, or you can throw in like a Taric or a Skarner. Doesn't really matter. And instead of Briar, I guess you can throw in Swain over Briar if you want to get rid of the Slayer on GP, totally up to you. But essentially you just play your strongest board up to this comp later on at level 9. Draven potentially can just carry you. Like, this unit is just so strong overall. Or you can have the option just to play this as a reroll comp, totally up to you. Another version of Kindred that you can play would be the Freljord style, which I don't really recommend because there's not enough impact on this board. But I feel like if you're playing towards Yunara and it kind of fails, but you have a Kindred for whatever reason, then I guess this board will be fine. Instead of using Vi and Lores, you can use other units, but this is just a good budget version of it. And instead of using Fiddlesticks, you can use whatever as a +1 as well. So essentially, it's just mostly these units that you need, and you can just flex around with any unit. You can throw in Garen with Sejuani if you want to, but these are just good units to throw in because you get Piltover, and then Build 6 just takes away armor and magic resist, so you can do extra damage with Kindred. But yeah, if I were to play Kindred though, I would spam this variation instead because you have a lot of value tanks, and there is a lot of damage on this board. For the next comp, it's gonna be Azir Flex, and there's like many different ways to play it. First up, we got this one, which is the Lissandra Flex. You don't necessarily have to use Xerath. It's just good because it doesn't cluster up the front line a little bit. But most of the time you play Azir with Renekton and you just put whatever bruiser items you can on him, like Starax or whatever you have left over. The main items you do want for this board, if you're playing up to this, is if you're playing for Lissandra carry, you should always have Warmogs for Braum, so you can unlock Volibear. It's the easiest way of doing it. If not, you could do like 2 health items like Spirit and some sort of other health item, like for example, Steadfast Heart. Then I guess potentially this can unlock Volibear potentially, but just the easiest way of doing it is just having Warmogs on Braum. And then for your Lissandra items, it's just mana regen, stuff like such as Shojin, Adaptive Helm, and AP items don't really matter, it's just whatever damage items you can build. Because in general, Lissandra is just strong with just spamming her ability over and over, instead of having tons of damage. But yeah, essentially you just want Azir on drop and try to play up to this board, or you can play a different board where this style is actually a lot easier to do, because you just play for Diana carry instead. So you want to look for her items, which is Titans always, and then Bloodthirster with Gwynsu's Rageblade. This board is actually really easy to play for the most part. You can even play without Azir and still play up to the Diana board. This would be fine. There is a different version that I can show with this Diana board, which is playing up to Mel. So instead of doing Azir, you can do Ambessa and just don't have Xerath either. After she dies, if you put an item on her, then you're able to get Mel. So now you have this board instead, and you just throw in a +1 unit on the board, like for example, Skarner or Taric or whatever, or essentially a Juggernaut like Shyvana. So there's many different ways you can flex this board. Essentially, it's like the mixer of Diana carry, or you can play up to Azir Shurima. It's just having the option of playing Azir if you're thinking about playing Diana. And if you're wondering how to get Diana, all you have to do is just get Leona 2 and just put 3 items on her, and this way you can unlock Diana, then just transfer items back, and then you can just play Leona as a +1 unit. The strat here would be like to play your Yordos opener, so you can have some free rerolls, and then just use that free rerolls when you're rolling down at 7. Another variation, which is like the most high cap version, is the Azir with Annie. This is actually more of a luck sack comp, so it's more like if you're rolling down at level 8, or if you're playing for Annie, then this is an option you can play with Azir. But essentially, the idea is you kind of want to play Azir as soon as possible so you can have at least a Nautilus or Renekton, some sort of Shurima unit. And then when you hit level 9, then you can throw out the other Shurima unit. Or if you can't get it, then you can just throw in +1 Juggernaut, again, like Shyvana over the other Shurima, and that would be about it. It's just basically just playing 4 Arcanus of Annie, which she will be your carry, and then just play around Shurima. So basically, if you have Azir on drop, there's different variations you can play it, but most of the time it's an AP board style. And the package is mostly just like Swain, Nico, Vi, plus Azir, and just flex around whatever you can. Another one that I just seen in my last game, which is playing the Rise carry route with Azir, and you don't necessarily need Xerath. You can play with Nautilus or Renekton as well, as long as you just have Shurima on the board. But essentially, you want to play up to this board at level 9. So you want to roll for this board at level 9. Essentially, it's the same idea as the Annie Yordos board. So basically, you play for a Yordo opener, and you want to win streak up to level 9 with this board. And in order to unlock Rise, the units you want to use would be like Set, Kennen, and Wukong. So now you have Ionia in. And you also have 2 Yordos with Kubuko and Kennen. And you should be able to unlock both of them if you're playing a Yordle route. And then hopefully you can find Vi. If not, you can use any Piltover unit. So you can have Seraphine in to have Piltover. And then just throw in a +1 Targon, then you're able to unlock Rise. So essentially, to summarize, the traits you want to put in is Ionia, Piltover, Yordle, and then most of the time you won't have Shurima yet, so it'll be Targon. But yeah, in order to make this style of the board works though, you need at least an Econ augment with your Yordle opener. The next comp I'm gonna briefly go over would be 7 Void, because it's actually pretty easy to play. Essentially the board is just this. You can use Wukong over Volibear if you can't get Volibear. I actually prefer having a Wukong 2 over Volley because extra tank. But if you don't have Wukong 2, you can just use Volley 2 instead. Essentially, you just want to put all health items you can on Rift Herald, and you want to have Gwynsu's Rageblade no matter what on Kai'Sa. And her second best item is Gunblade, +1 AP. You can do 2 Gwynsu's Rageblade or just whatever AP, doesn't really matter. And for Baron, as long as you have BT or Hodge, and you can build whatever other items afterwards, it doesn't really matter. In the early game, how you want to play this board is to start off with Shogath and Kog'Maw would be best, and then you can play into the Caitlyn, so you have Longshot, and then +1 Juggernaut. What I like to do is Blitzcrank 2, because he's a good tank. Then when you hit level 5, just throw in +1 Piltover. If you can, pick Blast Shield. If not, you can just do things to slow enemies down, like EMP or Nets, either one is fine. And then you just play your best board afterwards later. But this will be your best opener here, and you just play up to this board over time, and that's basically about it. The tip I can give is if you're not over 70 HP on stage 4, then you should look to roll down at level 8. And the main units you would want to roll down is around these units here. So you want mostly these units when you're rolling down level 8. Try to 2-star Rift Herald and Kaisa, potentially Bel'Veth. And Bel'Veth will hold on to the Baron items until you can make it to level 10. And for the budget units you can use would be like Swain. You get Juggernaut with Cho'Gath, and you also gain a really good unit on the board with Arcanus on Kog'Maw. And then the last unit I would throw in is like some sort of bruiser, which would be Wukong. Now you have a very decent board. But if you can't get one or the other of Swain or Wukong and you high roll into a Sen Illusion, then I would use Sen Illusion instead. But yeah, basically just play your best board you can, which is like mostly around these units, hit level 10, take out the Swain, and then you're able to play with Malzahar and Baron later. And Malzahar, to be honest, I feel like he's not too good. So just having him level 1 in your bench is fine. But yeah, once you get to this point, then you just transfer the items over, and there you go. Now you have 9 Void. It's actually really easy to play this comp. You could just play the level 8 variation if you have to for top 4. If you want first, then you have to play for Baron. Next up would be the Tryndamere reroll, and I do have a comp video about this. If you want to check that out, it'll be this thumbnail here in my YouTube channel. But yeah, in order to play this comp, essentially you just want to play up to this board here, as we see here. Pretty easy. The main item you want is QSS, and hopefully Gwynsu's Rageblade into a Bloodthirster, which is a good main items. But if you have artifacts, which kind of change up the game a little bit, it depends on what you have. So if you have, for example, Rapid Fire Cannon, which would probably be the best item on Tryndamere, then you don't need Bloodthirster. But if you have other items, say for example like Mittens for example, then you want to get rid of Gwynsu's Rageblade, play Mittens and Bloodthirster, and this will be fine as well. So basically any attack speed item, just take out Gwynsu's Rageblade for that attack speed item, and anything to do with Lifesteal or Rapid Fire Cannon, trade it out for Bloodthirster. And you always build QSS no matter what, because it's his best item overall. You could potentially take out QSS if you have Rapid Fire Cannon, this will be fine as well, but I just feel like there's no point in doing that because you have Slayer in for Lifesteal anyways, and he's going to become a ranged unit from here on out. So having these items would probably be better, in my opinion. But it's up to you on which style you want to do. And for Ash's case, all she needs is just Kraken or whatever damage items you can put on her. It doesn't really matter, because Tryndamere is going to be doing most of the work, and you want to main tank your Nico. If you can 3-star her, great. And if you can also 3-star Sejuani, that's also good. And then we hit level 7, then you throw out Swain. So now we have better tanks on the board. So therefore, we have more synergies, and we can potentially just win out the game with this style of the board, and just throw in +1 whatever you can. Basically about it for the Tryndamere reroll. On to the next comp, which is my favorite actually to play right now, is the T-Hex. And there's a certain tech you want to do. The idea is to 3-star Caitlyn. And the reason why is because when you feed 3-star Caitlyn into T-Hex, T-Hex will do tons of damage. And most of the time when you play like this, T-Hex is going to be 1-star for a bit. So therefore, having this Caitlyn 3 being swallowed up by T-Hex makes him into like almost like a level 1.7. So he's almost level 2, but not strong enough to be level 2. But he still does a lot of work with Caitlyn 3. And the main items you want to build would be like IE, Guardbreaker, +1. It doesn't really matter. It could be artifacts, or if you can, Deathblade or whatever. You don't really need lifesteal on it. He just one-shots everything. So who needs lifesteal when you can do that? But essentially, when you play your level 6 board to roll for this board, you want to play mostly these units, and this will be your board most of the time at level 6. And you just throw in a +1 unit like Braum if you can find them, or you can do Xin Zhao. This will be fine as well. And then in order to gain T-Hex, you have to 3-star Caitlyn and 2-star the rest of these built over units. Or if you can't get a lowers 2 for whatever reason and you find a Seraphine, this also works as well in order to unlock T-Hex. And once you do unlock T-Hex, then the main board you want to play is something like this at level 8, and then this will be pretty strong. If you don't have Braum 2 yet, you can make Lores 2 your main tank first. So whatever tank items you have, you just put on Lores, and then once Braum's level 2, then you make him into a main tank. The main thing here to point out is that when you hit level 9, you want to pivot down from 6 Piltover to 4. The reason why you play 6 at level 8, or basically level 6 to 8, is because T-Hex 1 isn't strong enough. but once you get T-Hex2, then you can drop it down. And the units that I would drop most of the time would be like Vi and Orianna, and then now you can flex around with a bunch of units here. A good unit you can throw in would be Azir, because you get Shurima and extra Sand Soldiers, and you can throw in a Shurima unit as well. On top of that, if you want to upgrade Nautilus into Ornn, you can do that as well. The one tip I can give, as you're building up to this board, you don't really need Gunner, I would say, for T-Hex. It's not really too important, because the rest of the Gunner units are kinda trash. The only one is really broken is Lucian Senna, so because the benefit of them being Gunner and they're really OP units, this helps out T-Hex a lot. So as you're building up your board, you don't really need Gunner, just unless you find Lucian Senna, you can throw him out on the board. And this is basically about it, how you play T-Hex. It's actually super easy to force like almost every game. As long as you high roll Caitlyn 3 fast enough, you can easily hit level 9 later on to play your final board here. And if you're wondering for what modules to get for Piltover, I would say the first one should always be Blast Shield. If not, anything to slow down the enemy like EMP or Nets. And then the second module, it should always be Mana Regen, so that T-Hex can cast a lot faster. If not, it could be damage. There's one where every time your Piltover units cast, you get more damage amp later. So that one's also fine as well. And the third one, anything to do with damage would be best. On to the next comp, which is Diana. I feel like I don't really need to explain this one again. If you do want to see this comp, the time stamp would be somewhere around 6 minutes and 2 seconds. So if you want an explanation of the Diana comp, you can see it there. But the concept is basically you just play Diana and then flex into any AP board you can build. If you're playing into Kindred, that's fine to do as well, but it's just Diana into Fast 9 to play legendary units. Next comp is going to be Yunara, and there's 2 different ways of playing it. The first one is pretty simple, everyone knows this one, and it will be the Yunara Flex. Essentially, it's pretty easy. You just play up to Yunara by having an Ionia opener. I went more into depth about this comp. It'll be this thumbnail here if you want to check out that video. But to summarize everything, let's just play Ionia opener, try to unlock Kennen and Kabuko along the way, and you play up to this board here without the Rise, and then once you hit level 9, you throw in Rise, and Rise technically is not your carry. He's just a support unit that helps debuff enemies to do less damage to you, and he also chills them, which makes Lissandra do more damage, because if units are chill, she hits even harder. The main items you want to build on Yunara is IE first, and then Kraken, then potentially Quincy's Rageblade or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I missed the mark saying in the video of the Yunara comp that Quincy's Rageblade is her core item, but it's actually IE, because to my knowledge, I think there is a crit bug at the moment, so she does more damage than she's supposed to. So essentially IE is like her best item right now. But yeah, it's basically about it for this style of Yunara. The other version, which I tried, and surprisingly, I actually almost top 4 with, and it will be to play for 5 Ionia. The concept of playing this comp is you want to play vertical Ionia, and if you have set items, like for example Jewel Gauntlet plus Hodge or whatever you can build, like Titans is also really good on set, so you can build this as well. Set will just one-shot basically everything. The main reason why you would want to play this comp is because if your Ionia is the one that gives you either gold or XP, this will allow you to hit level 9 easier. So if it's not any one of those, then I would feel like you shouldn't be playing this style of the board. But essentially everything here complements each other, like Jhin with Senna Lucian for Gunner, and then Kindred also gives Quick Tracker for Yunara. And you can throw a +1 unit like Fiddlesticks, or you can throw in what I did, which is Skarner to have extra tank on the board. And this positioning is actually pretty nice, because you want Set to get hit right away, so he does the sit-ups, and it comes back and just one-shots everything. So that's the reason why you want to have less frontline for this style of the board, and you want to maintain your Wukong as much as possible. But yeah, other than that for this board, that's basically about it. There is technically another style you can do, which I've heard, but I don't really prefer it. And instead of using like Skarner, you can use Swain. And because Swain is an Arcanist, you just use, instead of Jhin, and Ahri. So you have really some synergies here. You have extra AP for Set to do more damage. Instead of Senna Lucian, you could just throw in Shyvana for that Juggernaut. So it's totally up to you how you want to play it. You can play this style, or you can play the last one that you saw earlier. Alright, next up we got is Bilgewater. Now when most people play this comp, they kind of don't understand that you play 7 Bilgewater so you can get items on MF, so you can get any AD ones, or get any tank items for your Kanch later. It's basically just play up to 7 Bilgewater and try to win streak as much as you can. Then when it comes to stage 4, you want to roll for MF2 and whatever level 2s you can have on the board. You don't have to play specifically this style of the board. This is just a good example where you can use Taric and Skarner hopefully. Instead of Volibear, you could do Wukong if you want to like use a more budget friendly version. But the silvers that you use in the early game is meant to upgrade units to win streak. If you're technically loose streaking with Bilgewater, which I feel like you shouldn't be playing with Bilgewater at that point, then there's no point buying the copies. You might as well just save the silver till you hit 5 Bilgewater, and then you roll till you find MF. Then afterwards, when you find MF, try to play 7 Bilgewater to use the rest of the silvers to gain items. And once you have a decent amount of items, I would say at least try to buy like 2 or 3, like at least 1 tank and then 2 or 1 extra damage item. Then use the rest of your silvers to put more stat points to make MF do more damage, which is basically about it for Bilgewater. In the early game, whatever items you're using, most of the time I like to build Shojin or some sort of like sword item like IE, and you put it on Graves as your main carry until you make it to this point. Unless somehow you get an early GP2, then you can make him the main carry as well. Either one's fine. So we got is one of my favorite comps, which is Vayne. This comp is actually really good if you have a Vayne opener, or if you have some sort of Demacia opener. With bows, this should be fun to play. And the idea is to build as much Krakens as you can on Vayne, and plus 1 item like Hextech Gunblade. This is actually her BIS. The thing to note here is that Guinsoo's Rageblade is actually really fake on Vayne. It does really bad. So there's actually no point in building that item. Just build as much Krakens as you can. If you can't build Gunblade or second Kraken, you can always build like IE, Deathblade, Giant Slayer. Those are fine too. And the mistake I've seen a lot of people do is they roll at level 7 for whatever reason. And I feel like doing it that way is not worth it because you want 7 Demacia. Since 7 Demacia does damage from the synergy itself. So it always lowers down enemies' HP by like 5% of their maximum health. So therefore you kind of want to play for 7 Demacia. That means that you should be rolling at level 8 for Vayne 3. And it's fine if you stay level 8 for Vayne 3. Because once you do hit Vayne 3, it kind of almost wins out. But if you want to guarantee a win out, you do have to hit 9 or 10. And a good +1 unit for this comp would be Kai'Sa or Swain. The thing you want to do is you want to unlock Galio, where you have to 2-star almost all of your Demacia units. So at the time, you probably will have Sona. And then once you get Galio, then you can sell Sona, and Galio will still be in your bench, but it still activates the 7 Demacia. And then a good +1 afterwards would be Swain. So after you get Galio, then you can throw in Swain. And you gotta keep the Kai'Sa in for that long shot for Vayne. At the time, it won't be Kai'Sa. It probably might be something cheaper, like Caitlyn, which is fine. As long as some sort of long shot units, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's basically about it for the Vayne reroll. It's just a lot of misplays that I've seen people do that I have to clarify. Couple comps, I'll just speedrun it because there's not really much to say about these comps. But for the Volibear board, essentially you want to position almost exactly like this. The reason why is because this allows Sejuani to walk over here, and then Volibear just walks around. Then he jumps the backline afterwards he casts his ability. So having this kind of positioning helps. Or basically he walks up here and just attacks whatever unit here. And he doesn't really get attacked too often. So it kind of helps to do this kind of positioning. The concept is when you're rolling down at level 8, you want to have Lissandra as your AP carry at the time. And Rise is going to be a level 9 unit. The main thing you want to unlock would be Kennen and Kabuko. And I would say if you have the idea of playing Yunara, but for whatever reason you failed to play it, this will be a good board. Or if you're playing with an Anivia opener for whatever reason into Freljord, this could work as well. Or if you're playing Yordle opener, you can pivot into this as well. Probably the Yordle opener would probably be the best one because you can put AP items on Teemo and then play up to this. This should be fine. Then you hit level 9, transfer your items from Lissandra to Rise, and he'll do a lot of work with all of the good regional traits you can have here, which would be like Yordle, Ionia, Freljord, and Targon. So basically, Rise does a lot of damage, debuffed enemies, and he heals the board because of Targon. The best items you can put on Volibear would be like Strats Gauge, which is like probably like one of the easiest items to build, and you kind of have to have a Warmongs in order to unlock Volibear. But you can also do both Strats and +1 health item like Warmongs or Spirit. That should be fine to unlock Volley with Wukong too. And if you have 4 Brews on your board, then you should be able to unlock him. Other items you can put on Volley would be like Bloodthirster and Titans, just basically any bruiser items. But for the most part, I feel like you should focus on AP items first and tank items, then whatever leftover AD for Volley. And that's basically about it for this board. Next up would be the Draven reroll board. There's not really much to say about this board. It's just either start with Draven or pivot into it. And you want his main items to be like Kraken and Guinsoo's. +1, like it could be Deathblade, it could be Giant Slayer, it could be Gunblade, it doesn't really matter. And then for GP, I feel like all he needs is just a Starax and he should be fine with whatever items on top of that. And hopefully you have Even Shroud on your tank because you're going to need that armor break on the board since you're playing mostly AD. I feel like this board is actually straightforward. There's not really much to say about this board because it's super easy to play. But yeah, if you want to 3-star everything here, feel free to do so. And if you're wondering what unit to throw out at level 8, it'll be a Piltover unit, like for example, a Seraphine, so you can have extra synergies on the board. Or you can just throw in Senna Lucian to empower the board even more. Whichever one is fine, just throw in whatever you can to win. Next up, we got is the Lissandra board. And this is just a basic Lissandra board. It's not really the one that you kind of want to run in most games. The idea of playing Lissandra is you just want to flex around with her, where she's just the AP stabilizer for you to fast 9. But if you do want to play a specific Lissandra comp, then this would be it, where you play 5 Freljord into 4 Invoker. Technically, you can just play 4 Invoker with whatever, but this probably might be the easiest one to do. And instead of Ornn, you can just look for any budget Warden unit, like for example Nautilus or something, until you can find Ornn. And instead of Volibear, you can just do Ashe if needed, but you will need that Volibear, so you do have to build a Warmonks on Braum so you can unlock him, because having Bruiser actually helps a lot. So once you're able to unlock Volibear, then that would be nice. You can throw in a +1 unit like Taric or Skarner, doesn't really matter. But for the most part, when you're rolling a level 8, your board will look something like this for the most part, because the main units we kind of need is a Braum 2 and a Lissandra 2. And for Lissandra items, it doesn't really matter. As long as you have mana item and some sort of AP item like Morello, Death Cap, it doesn't really matter. Personally, I like putting 2 mana items into Lissandra, like Shojin, Voice Staff, and then +1 AP like Morello or something. It doesn't really matter to me. And if you want to, you can switch from playing 5 Freljord into more legendary units. So instead of Sejuani, it could be a legendary unit, same with Volibear. Or if you get Volley 2, then it'll be great. It's just mix and match. It doesn't really matter what you play. This comp in general isn't a first place comp. It's more of just either a top 6 so you don't get 8th place, or potentially top 4. This next one, I'm just gonna show the Bard Bruiser version, and that's it, because I feel like Ixtal is not really worth the effort to play. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Ixtal Bard, it's just takes way too much effort for a 50% chance you're probably gonna win the game, because the 550 cash out for Ixtal can basically win you the game, or you might lose because you didn't get the 2 dupes to make a Brock 2. But anyways, getting into the Bard Bruiser board, most of the time when I play this comp, I have at least 1 or 2 silence to start with, and it may be like an Aphelios on the side. This kind of indicates I want to play this comp. Every time when I have that indication, I most of the time get top 2. And my strat to play this board is stage 2-1, I save 10 gold, and then stage 2-2, I roll 4 Bard. And during that time, if I have a Scion pair, then I get Scion 2. Or maybe I just get multiple copies of Scion to hopefully get him Scion 2 as soon as possible. And this board is actually pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I would say if you want to abuse a comp that's so easy to play, to get around maybe like high plat to emerald, this comp could be it, since it scales pretty well towards the late game. The main item you want on Bard would be like Archangel Staff, Jewel Gauntlet, plus a mana item like Blue Buff, Adaptive, or Shojin. Either one's fine. And for Aphelios items, all you need is just a Kraken and then whatever afterwards, it doesn't matter. And for Scion, as long as you have Spirit and whatever tank items, you're good to go. Basically about it for this comp, nothing hard about it. The only downside to this comp is if you don't 3-star things as fast as possible, then you're going to be so behind that you probably might get an 8th. So that's the reason why I said it's good to play from a strong opener. Also, 3-starring Alawi and Shen is actually worth it too, because it gives Bard more damage for the more 3-stars you have. Alright, finally down to our conditional comps. This one is going to be Yasuo with the Darkened Scythe. In order to play the comp, it's pretty simple. It's just hit level 6, play for 5 Ionia with Yasuo, then Zhao, Shen, Kennen, and then +1. If you can get Wukong, great. If not, you can get probably Yunara or Ahri, doesn't really matter. And with the +1 Slayer, because at the time you won't have Yone. Then once you 3-star Yasuo, you're able to unlock Yone, and you have Yone on the board, and try to build up to 7 Ionia. Then your +1 unit is going to be Kindred or whatever of value, like Skarner or Taric, doesn't really matter. For your items on Yasuo, it's going to be Darkened Scythe, which is basically your lifesteal item. For your items on Yasuo, Darkened Scythe is basically your lifesteal item, so you don't have to worry about lifesteal. And you have IE for that damage, and Edge of Night to keep him alive. If not, you could do like QSS or Titans is also okay. And then for Yone, just whatever items you put on him, something like this is also okay. Leftover AP items, just throw it on set. And that's basically about it for this comp. It's actually not that hard. It's just, hopefully you have Darkened Scythe, roll for Yasuo 3, get Yone, and hopefully win out. Next up would be Veigar with double death caps, because in order to unlock him, you need 2 death caps, and the board will look something like this, where you have some sort of mana items on Veigar with a death cap. So basically 2 mana items, so you can just cast Infinite, and you just put the other death cap on Fizz. The idea here is you just want to keep rerolling at level 8, so you can 2-star Veigar and 2-star Fizz, potentially get 3-star Kennen or 3-star Kabuko. But if you do want to push for max cap, then I would suggest to drop Lulu for Swain. So now we have a better unit on the board, and we drop Teemo for Wukong. So now we have a way better board than we did earlier. And then your level 9 unit, you can either throw in Ziggs if you want to. And personally, I actually prefer, instead of the Wukong, I actually prefer to keep the Teemo just for the long shot. But if you do want to keep in the Wukong over the Teemo, that's fine. And then just trade out Poppy as well, because if it only needs 7 Yordles, you trade out Poppy for Shyvana, and this will be technically your max cap. Depending on where your spot is, if you're healthy enough, then you could just keep playing 8 Yordles so you can 3-star Fizz. since there is a pretty high chance for Yordle drops to give you Fizz. So it's totally up to you if you want to play for the Teemo and Poppy over the Shyvana and Wukong. It's totally up to you if you want to take these units out for these two. You just mix and match. Totally up to you. The thing I do want to talk about here is the Fizz positioning. These two are like the best two spots because it allows you to jump the corners. So if you want to jump the left corner, you play over here. You want to jump the right corner, you play over here. It is a 50-50 chance on if he does jump the corner units, because sometimes he might jump on the other side. In most cases, he should jump the corner and potentially kill them. Now onto the last and final comp, it's going to be Veigo Hero Augment. And it's actually pretty easy and straightforward. It's just 3-star Veigo, play as much Shadow as you can, and mix and match with whatever you can. This is a pretty good basic board where we play with Loris, Seraphine, and Fiddlesticks because they fill in the synergies, same with Kindred. But essentially you can throw in whatever you want. It doesn't have to be like this exactly. You could throw in, instead of Seraphine, you can do Azir if you potentially find him. And then instead of Callista and Fiddlesticks, you can also play with the Shrima with the Azir at this point, with like a Renekton or Nasus, and then you just have +1 more Warden, like for example, an Ornn. You just basically mix and match with whatever you can and just try to play your best board. It doesn't really matter what you do, to be honest. As long as Veigo 3 is just strong enough to win out, then you're basically good to go with whatever backline you can throw in. Personally, I really don't like Callista because I think she is a really weak unit. So I feel like there's no point of playing Callista in the final board. Technically, you don't even have to play Gwen either, but if you have a strong disruptor unit like Azir, then it's kind of worth it in the end to do it. But just use your imagination with the Veigo board. You can play with less Shadow Owls and just more value units on the board. Like another version I like to do as well would be like, instead of Loris and Ornn, you can also do Nautilus, and Nautilus is a Juggernaut unit as well, so that means you can throw in Shyvana. You're basically just mix and matching a lot to see what you can hit on the board. For your items, basically it's just BT, and these are his BIS, which is Titans and Edge of Night. I'll say probably the second best here would be Titans, and then just +1. And this is actually pretty important, because for Thresh's case, you kind of want Morello on him like almost no matter what. It's like one of his best items. And you can do either Voice Staff, or what I like to do sometimes is, if I cannot build Voice Staff, would be in Ionic Spark on Thresh. You just pick one or the other. Basically about it for this board. And that's basically all the comps I played to hit the Masters. If you want to see me grind even further, or just be Hearthstone Masters, you can check me out either on Twitch or YouTube live. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Laters.